everybody, and welcome back. I'm Karen here with Kelly today to continue to answer your grief questions, your grief holiday questions. We're still here every Wednesday and Saturday. Remember to subscribe so that you can stay on top of everything that may be coming out. So, Kelly, this question is for you. How can I utilize the new year as an opportunity to shape my intentions for myself?
Absolutely, right? I think everybody kind of gets to this January time frame and thinks, okay, like the New Year's resolutions, right? For the majority of us, what they last until February. So maybe it's a shift. Maybe it's a thinking about intentions differently. And I think we need to preface that sometimes New Year's can be really difficult for people who are grieving, especially if your loved one died in 2024. You're coming into 2025 into a new year that your loved one is never going to be physically a part of, and how challenging that can be. And everybody's always like, oh, happy new year. Well, for some of us, we don't always want to leave that old year, because that means that they're not coming with us into this new year. And so, I think sometimes people don't recognize how difficult that New Year's can be, especially when you're grieving. So just to be mindful of that. And again, like all of our other videos where we talk about being kind to yourself and taking care of yourself and practicing self-compassion, make sure you're doing that as well. But as far as the question is, what are your intentions? And I think it's just thinking about, how can you bring your loved one with you into this new year? How can you continue that bond, that relationship with them? Maybe thinking about it that way, in addition to other things in your life that you'd like to look at. How is there something that maybe you want to do in 2025 in memory or in honor of your loved one? Is there maybe a hobby you want to take up that they enjoy? Is there a way to keep that connection with them? And then also thinking about, what is it that you want to feel in the next year? How do you want your grief journey to look? Is there things you need to do to take care of yourself? Is it meaning maybe doing more journaling or participating more in grief groups, or, doing different things to really make space for that grief? So I think it's kind of a lot of different things. I just did a vision board workshop, and it was for coping with the holidays, but it really became almost more of a memorial vision board. And so even if you're thinking about that, maybe that's a great idea, is to just get some magazines out, some pictures, and just kind of start thinking about, what do you hope for yourself for 2025? Is it more peace? Is it more connection to your deceased loved one? Is it more time with friends and family? Is it maybe making a shift in your grief where you're feeling, where you're having more moments where it feels okay, and you're more in that loss oriented or in restoration oriented than loss oriented? So just kind of think about that. Might be a good way to kind of just jot down some words. What came across for the majority of the people, we did a nice meditation when we made these vision boards, and what came across was, just keep things simple.
Mm,
And so
yeah,
maybe that's your goal, for your intention for 2025, is just to keep things simple. But
yeah,
it's totally, kind of sit with it and think about it, and kind of, there's no right or wrong as well.
right. Well, and I love the word intention and, as opposed to resolution, because as you said, that's usually like, oh, I've got to eat better and I've got to start exercising. And then, it's very difficult to be sticking with those things. But intention is something I talk to people about really throughout the year because for example, I'll have a person that's like, oh my gosh, the other day I sat on the couch and I listened or I watched Netflix for like 3, 4 hours, in a row. And I just feel so bad. And I just feel like I was so lazy. And so, we kind of talked about everything that they had going on. And clearly this person needed that rest time. And so, what I always talk to people about is the idea of like putting the intention into things. If you sit down and say, you know what, I've had a ton going on and I just need to check out and to completely veg out and just to be here. And I'm putting intention into sitting and watching Netflix. It looks the same as not putting intention into it, but it mindset wise is so different. And I think it's about putting a little bit of intention into your days in general. I think sometimes grieving people feel like they're just being sort of dragged along by life. So intentions are you putting a little bit of that energy and that control a little bit back in. It doesn't mean having to make huge sweeping changes, but it just feels like you're participating. You get a little bit of a say in what you're doing, what your intentions are. And, I think a lot of times in grief, it's like, this is what's happened. This is where I am. Where do I go from here? And we know that if we keep doing what we've always been doing, then we're going to keep getting and being in the same situation. And if you are a person that's thinking, I think I'm ready for a change, or I think I'm feeling stuck. If there's one good thing about the New Year's, because there's a lot of things that may feel like there's not, but it is sort of that time that we're used to thinking, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe I do something a little bit different. So it can provide that little bit of motivation, I think, for people too, which we sometimes need.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that idea of that in more being more intentional in things, right? And
Yeah.
it definitely does shift your mindset of thinking more of like, oh, I'm choosing this, right? I'm choosing to binge watch Netflix, which sounds amazing to me right now, but and I'm gonna remember this, Karen, when I'm doing that, and I'm setting that intention.
That's right.
But I think that's a really valuable thing to kind of think about and reflect on.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it kind of helps with just our general feelings about ourselves too, so we're not like feeling bad about how we're behaving or the things that we're needing to do for the self-care in the midst of it. So, all right, well,
Yeah.
Kelly, if you needed to summarize, how can I utilize the new year as an opportunity to shape my intentions for myself? What would you say?
Well, I'm going to go back to what you just said, Karen, is setting that intention, like being more intentional about the things you're doing. If you know you need to take care of yourself and engage in self care, just don't beat yourself up for it. You're setting that intention. I also think it's a great idea. It's a time to sit down and just kind of reflect on where you're at currently. What do you want for 2025? Do you want to create more space for your grief? Do you need to lean into your grief more? Does that mean you need to start some counseling or join a grief group?
Yeah,
Is there ways to honor your loved one in the next year? And what does that look like? Is there something that you want to that you've been thinking about doing and finding meaning in your grief that you're ready to take that step and that leap and do that next year? Or does it mean that you need to make more space and time for yourself? Do you need to engage in more self care? Just, maybe even you just sit down and reflect on that. Maybe you journal, maybe you make that vision board. Do what feels right for you. There's no right or wrong. Don't put all this pressure on yourself that you have to do this, this, and this. Just kind of think of it as a way. What are some ways, some affirmations that you want to hold on to, some intentions you want to set for the next year?
yeah, I think that's great. All right, Kelly. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody. And we'll be back again Wednesdays and I was going to say Thursdays. That's not right. Wednesdays and Saturdays. And we'll hope to see you again in the new year, of course. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kelly.